Hello everyone, welcome back to the continuation of our KALDHEIM set review. So this time we're going through Red, and we're just gonna dive right in because I have a tendency to talk a lot and make these videos much longer than they probably need to be. But anyway, let's get going. So we're starting off with Arnie Brokenbrow. Look at that dude. What is that? Is that like a dragon tooth in his skull? Alright. A 3/3 human berserker for 3. Haste and boast 1. You may change Arnie Brokenbrow's base power to 1, plus the greatest power among other creatures you control until the end of turn. I headbutted a troll and won. Okay, I see. It's a troll tooth? Horn? Something? Alright, anyway. It seems good. I mean, it's perfectly fine in any red deck, right? A 3/3 haster for 3 with an ability. So, yeah, I think it's perfectly fine. Nothing crazy, but fine. Axguard Cavalry, a 2/2 dwarf berserker for 2. Alright, so we're going to be seeing some dwarves here now in red. Target creature gains haste until end of turn. Okay, sure. There are plenty of things that do that. I don't know if a dwarf needs it. Pretty epic art, though. Alright. Basalt Ravager, a 4/2 giant wizard for 4. When Basalt Ravager enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to any target where X is the greatest number of creatures you control that have a creature type in common. Okay. Sure. I suppose that's fine. Giant wizard, so it'll be giants or wizards? Eh? Like, it's just kind of like, eh. But it is any target, so it could kill a planeswalker too, or it could just kill you. It could kill your opponent. So, yeah, I could see this as being in a giant wizard deck. I still need to see, like, I know that giant wizards is a deck. It is a deck. So our last set review was black, so there were no giants in there, obviously. So giants is going to be like, is it? It's going to be blue-red. I know that there are giants in white and in green in other sets, but KALDHEIM's going to push this typing to be is it, mostly, if not only. And we saw some good giants in blue, and we know that there are some good giants in blue. Good is kind of a relative term. Like what other giants there are available. I don't know. Giants is gonna be weird. But I think that that one is definitely a contender in a giant deck. Alright, Bearded Axe. A Bearded Axe, huh? Interesting. An artifact. For 2. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each dwarf equipment or vehicle you control. With 2. Very interesting. Very dangerous in the right kind of deck. So there is a card that attaches equipments to dwarves. So this is the first equipment that I've come across that seems like it would be in a dwarf deck. Because before then there were just not enough good equipment to like be considered part of a dwarf deck, even though it was pushing that kind of like archetype. The cards on those archetypes were pushing to be equipment and aura decks and vehicle decks. They're pushing to be all sorts of things, right? Like dwarves is kind of like all over the place. And this is the first time I've seen a card that might be good for dwarves. The problem is that there aren't any dwarves with trample, so it doesn't really matter how big they are. At least I haven't seen any yet. There might be some, we haven't seen any yet. So that's the next thing that I'll be looking for, is trample or a way of giving them trample, or maybe you just play with an Embercleave, right? Because if you're playing dwarves, like, equipment, that's the word I'm looking for. If you're playing dwarves and equipment, you play Embercleave, which gives your dwarves trample, so maybe you attach that with this one, and then you just, like, destroy somebody, obviously, because they'll be, like, a 10/10 double striker at that point. Alright, anyway. Briggy, God of Storytelling. That's a nice thing to be a god of. Whenever you, 3/3 god for 3. I've been doing this for hours straight at the reviews at this point. I'm like getting them all out at once. So as I go along, I'll probably get more and more distracted. Alright, so a 3/3 god for 3. Whenever you cast a spell, add red. Until the end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. Interesting. I like that. It's the first time I've seen any kind of interaction with boasting. Harnfill Horn of Bounty. Discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. That's also interesting. Very expensive, though. Too expensive, I would say. That's way too expensive. So you'll never play that side, but you might play this side. Whenever you cast a spell, add red. So, if you have a bunch of 1 mana cost red creatures, you can just play them all out. And if they have boast, then even better. Interesting. She'll make it. She'll be in some decks for sure. Mono red decks. She'll absolutely 100% be in mono red decks. Like, holy crap. That part, whenever you cast a spell. Because you have to understand, spells are not just creatures, like, or instances in sorceries, as you might, like, expect. That's, like, what a spell is, because it's not a creature, and your mind just, or at least, this is how I learned magic, was my mind, like, immediately went to, okay, a spell is, like, obviously not a creature or an enchantment spell. I mean, an artifact. But spell is literally anything that you cast in this game, including something from outside the game. Like if you're casting from exile or you're casting from your graveyard, you're casting that spell. It is a spell. Everything is a spell. So yeah. That's very good for mono red to aggro, like to just have free mana. Just have free mana. So good card. Very good card. All right, so here we go. Breakneck Berserker, a 3/2 haster for 3. A 3/2 dwarf berserker for 3 with haste. Very vanilla, obviously. It's just a common. So kind of like a filler dwarf, filler berserker with haste. I don't think that makes it good enough to be playable. It's a very whatever card. All right. Calamity Bearer, a 3/4 giant berserker for 4. If a giant source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. Alright, so this card now is even better. And probably definitely in giant decks. If giant decks do end up being kind of direct damagey and not like control-y, which still remains to be seen. Because now you're dealing a ton of damage with that giant if this is out. This belongs in every giant deck. Calamity Bearer, for sure. Cinderheart Giant, another big giant, a 7/6 giant berserker for 7. Trample, when Cinderheart Giant dies, it deals 7 damage to a creature an opponent controls. Oh, okay. Oh, chosen at random? Oh god, that's awful. This is an awful card. If it was 7 damage to any permanent, then that would be I mean, that would obviously be too strong, I think. Because if you could deal 7 damage to an opponent and you had this giant out, then that would be 14 damage straight to the dome, which would be way too much. But as this stands, this card is garbage because it's at random. Like, what if they had a bunch of tokens and then they had one, like, token lord? Not good. All right, Craven Hulk, a 4/4 giant coward for 4. Craven Hulk can't block alone. That's an interesting card. I wonder if there's any weird interaction that you can have with having a coward out. I don't think so. I think there is nothing good about having a coward creature type. Other than, I mean, there's nothing good about having one, period. Because the only interaction that I've ever heard of with cowards is the one Berserker guy from 2021, or was it from Zendikar? Who cannot be blocked, warriors can't be blocked by cowards. So anyway, very, very bad card. Crush the Weak. Crush the Weak, sorcery for 3, deals 2 damage to each creature. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. Foretell. Wow. 2 damage to each creature. That is actually pretty strong. And foretell for just 1 red mana. That's actually pretty good. Good card. I will see this one. I believe that this one will see play. Definitely in a giant deck. If not in, like, any kind of red deck that has control. Or just bigger creatures. Yeah. Alright, Demon Bolt. An instant for 3. Demon Bolt deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. And foretell for 1 red. Yeah, this one will see play too. 4 damage is pretty good. Unfortunately, it doesn't kill a Lovestruck Beast, which is usually where you want to put your mind when you're thinking about removal. Does this remove one of the best creatures in the game right now? No. Well, that's too bad. But it does remove a lot of stuff for 1 red mana. I mean, 3 overall. So the foretell doesn't really reduce its cost, but it allows you, if you don't have anything to do, to invest in this card and then pay 1 later, which is pretty good, in my opinion. So I think this is pretty good. Doomscar Titan, a 4/4 giant berserker for 6. When Doomscar Titan enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until the end of turn. Huh. Ouch. Way too expensive still, I think. Even at its foretell cost, right? So even if you slam this on turn 5, I still think that that's probably too expensive for what it does. But it is a berserker. We got to keep our eyes on these berserkers. I don't think you want to play with this. There's like way too many better things out there than an Alpha Strike berserker. All right, Dragonkin Berserker, another berserker, a 2/2 human berserker for 2. First strike, boast abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control. What? How many? Have we seen any dragons yet? Well, I mean, we're just starting red, so I suppose there must be dragons, right? Boast for 5. Create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. Oof. Hold on. What was that boasting, girl? Whenever you cast a spell, blah, blah, blah. You don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So that's not as turns end, right? Do you lose all that mana after turns end? That's a good question. Creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. Okay, well, you're not doing this twice in a turn unless you have like a bajillion mana. But that's cool that this reduces boasting. I'd have to totally look to see what is available as dragons. And to go into the future of Magic a little bit, after this set, isn't it the D&D set after this set? And I mean, you're not going to make a Dungeons and Dragons set without dragons in it. So my guess is that this card and dragons in general are going to be a problem in the future, if not already. If we don't see something that already interacts with this, then in the future there is going to be something that does interact with that. All right. Dual Strike. For 2 red, an instant. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell with converted mana cost 4 or less this turn, copy that spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy. Foretell. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, cool. So, Burn might be back in Standard. I know that Burn never left Historic. I'm pretty sure, like, Mono Red Burn is a Historic deck. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't really been keeping up with Historic. But with Dual Strike, Foretell being super cheap, and Demon Bolt. Oh, it's target creature or planeswalker. Okay. Now I have to think about that. Because this would be really good as kind of a bringer back of red burn if there's another good burn spell that hits the head. We'll see. We'll see if we can find that. Maybe I've already passed it and just can't remember. Have I passed one already? No. Maybe it's giants. I don't know. It might be burn. Giants might be burn. That could be very well the case. That would be interesting. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Dwarven Hammer. When let's see. Equipment for 3. Sorry. When Dwarven Hammer enters the battlefield, you may pay 2, create a dwarf, and then a dwarf berserker. then attach Dwarven Hammer to it. And it gains +3/+0 and trample. 3/0 trample. So it would be a 5/1 trampler for 6. That's not good. This is not good. This is another one that's bad. Were there any of these? Have any of these been good? I know the white one wasn't. The blue one was kind of in a giant deck. It had a place. The black one. What was the black one? Was it that sword? No, that was the rune, right? Hold on. Forgive me a moment while I go back real quick. Where was the black one? The helm. The helm was also very bad. So far, the only one that is good in any capacity, and even that capacity is limited, is the blue one. Does this. Alright, Dwarven Reinforcements. Sorcery for 3. I'm sorry, for 4. Create 2 2/1 Red Dwarf Berserker tokens and foretell. That's pretty bad. Pretty bad. Fearless Liberator, a 2/1 Dwarf Berserker for 2. Not look like a dwarf. Boast for 3. Create a 2/1 Red Dwarf Berserker creature token. That seems also pretty bad. Unless, like, we decided during, or I guess I decided and shared with you that the Berserker cards wanted to die. And wanted to be, there was like lots of graveyard interaction with the black Berserker cards. So if Berserker ends up being Rakdos, because it looks like there are a lot of Berserkers in red, then maybe this isn't that bad. Because it gets a creature out on turn 2 that you don't mind dying, but you don't want to spend your turn 3 just boasting this card. You know, if you get us out on turn 2, turn 3 you attack in with this, it probably dies, and then you boast it to just get another 2/1 vanilla dwarf berserker creature token? Yeah, it doesn't seem good. This does not seem good. I do not know why this is uncommon. Alright, Fearless Pup. A 1/1 for 1 first striker. Look at that cutie pie. And it's a wolf, which is unfortunate. If you were a dog, then you could be in the doggo deck. Alright. So it's Boast for 3. Fearless Pup gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Oh, Pupper, you're bad. I'm sorry. Bad card. Alright. Fire Giant's Fury. Actually, it's first strike. So it's not awful. Pretty bad. Pretty bad, but it's not as bad as I've seen. Anyway, Fire Giant's Fury. A sorcery for 2. Target giant you control gets +2/+2 and trample until end of turn. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player this turn, you may exile that many cards from the top of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Fun. More giant fun. This could be particularly good. Because there are a lot of giants that are big and they just don't have trample. I think we spoke about that actually. And maybe one of the on one of the blue giants, I think we spoke about that it didn't have any way of getting around. It had no menace, it had no flying, it had no nothing. And it wanted to like deal damage to creatures or something. To opponents. So this would help that along. I think this is good. I'm excited for a giant deck, actually. Frenzied Raider. A 2/2 Demon Berserker for 2. Whenever you activate a boast ability, put a +1/+1 counter on Frenzied Raider. Cool. I like boasting being a thing. It looks like only red has it so far, though. So we'll see. We'll see what that makes of our Berserker deck, because this could be in the Berserker deck. I don't know if it's good enough to be in the Berserker deck, but could be. Or it could be in a boasting deck. Maybe they're separate. Maybe it's a boasting deck and a Berserker deck. Frostbite. Frostbite deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If you control 3 or more snow permanents, it deals 3 damage instead. That's cool. Is this the first snow card that we've seen in red? It is. That's too bad. Because you definitely don't want to play snow or you don't want to play red in your snow deck just for this card. Even though it seems pretty good, right? So it's a shock that can be upgraded to something better if you're playing snow or not. All right, Gilded Assault Cart. A 5/1 Trampler vehicle for 3. Crew 2. Sacrifice 2 treasures. Return Gilded Assault Cart from your graveyard to your hand. Treasures, eh? That's the first time we've seen anything about treasures. Our treasures coming back. I mean, honestly, with D&D, treasures are coming back, right? So we just talked about dragons and how dragons are going to come back with a D&D set. Treasure is absolutely going to come back in a D&D set. Because what do you what do you go on adventures for, right? I mean, you might go to like save the townsfolk, sure, but you always want that fat loot at the end of a quest. So treasures are probably coming back, which means that this is probably a prep card for a future set. I mean, it's not bad. It's a, 5/1 trampler for 3, which isn't the worst. Through 2. No, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I mean, you could augment this with a rune, right? You could give this the flying rune, and then you just go flying. But, I mean, why would you want that over anything else? Like, I guess because it's 5/1 trampler. I don't know. I don't think you would want a 2-for-1 yourself with that combination. So I think it's pretty bad. All right, Goldspan Dragon, 4/4 dragon for 5, flying haste. Whenever Goldspan Dragon attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token. There you go, more treasure tokens. Oops, sorry. Treasures you control have sacrificed this artifact, add 2 mana of any one color. Okay, so it makes treasures better. Goodness, okay. So whenever it attacks or becomes a target of a spell, so it's not even an opponent's spell, you could target your own dragon with spells and make treasures. Actually kind of funny. Okay. This is a good card. This is a type of card that you can build jank around. For sure. For sure. Especially considering that it just ramps you on top of that. And it's a dragon, and dragon stuff's happening. Dragon stuff is happening with this other guy. So you could create a dragon boast deck with these cards because you're ramping yourself when you target them, which means that you can boast easier. That could be a thing. But whether that becomes a thing or not, Goldspan Dragon would be good in other ways. Whether it's that idea ahead or not. So, good card. Alright, Haggy Mob, a 5/4 troll berserker for 5. Boast for 2. Haggy Mob deals 1 damage to any target. That's a pretty good boast. It's not very expensive either, which is nice. But that is very, specific to, if your opponent has a Scoot Swarm out and you want to attack, kill that darn Scoot Swarm, then sure, fine. This might be good. It's very expensive, right? So this is too expensive. That converted mana cost to how much, the stats, which is a 5/4. That's not like the best ever. And there's no way for it to like get around. It has no evasion. It doesn't fly. It doesn't have menace. Doesn't have trample. It doesn't have any of that stuff. So the boast is the best thing about this card. The boast is cheap. So if you were going to make a boast deck that makes boasts cheaper and you can do more than 1 boast every turn, then this is good. If you had both the other cards out, the god that makes things cheaper, or no, the god that allows you to do 2 boasts, and then the boast that makes the card that makes boasts cheaper, depending on whether you have a dragon in play, then this card would be good. That's way too many conditions to make this card good. So it's not. It's not good. All right. Immersturm Raider. A 2/1 Demon Berserker for 2. When Immersturm Raider enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. All right. That's fine. We've seen this card like a million times. It's now a Demon Berserker. Good for you. Okay. Magda, Brazen Outlaw. A 2/1 Dwarf Berserker for 2. Other dwarves you control get +1/+0. Okay, so here is our dwarf champion, or dwarf lord. And it's only +1/+0, which sucks. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token. Oh. Sacrifice 5 treasure tokens. Search your library for an artifact or dragon card, and put that card into the battlefield and shuffle your library. Whoa. Okay, I knew there was a dwarf lord, but I didn't know what she did. I'm not impressed by her stat buffing. I am interested with the other part, though. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, that's very important because you don't have to attack with your dwarf to tap it. You can ride a vehicle. What's the word that I'm looking for? You can crew a vehicle with your dwarf. So you can so dwarves are kind of all over the place, right? They have clerics, they have berserkers, they have healing capabilities, they have synergies with enchantments, they have synergies with auras, they have synergies with vehicles. So there's like a lot going on there, and none of it's very strong. This is the strongest synergy that I've seen for dwarves, right? So this makes me think that treasure vehicles might be where you want your dwarves to be. And unfortunately, the other treasure interactions are not dwarven, right? Which is unfortunate. Greatly unfortunate, actually. So like where you have giants, where they have all of this giant exclusive stuff going on, dwarves don't have any really cool dwarf exclusive stuff except for this. And this is unfortunately tied to other stuff that isn't dwarf related. So it doesn't synergize perfectly. What else could you do whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped? How else can you tap your dwarves? And is it worth it to tap all your dwarves for treasure tokens? It probably is. There must be a bunch of dwarves that you can tap to do stuff. Not just crew. Can you, if you have one single vehicle out, can you tap all of your dwarves to crew that vehicle, even though that's way more power than is needed? And I think you can. I think you can do that. Which means all you need is one vehicle to tap all your dwarves at the end of your opponent's turn to make 1 billion treasure tokens if you have 1 billion dwarves out. So that's interesting. So you would definitely play the minecart with this, because you could just get your minecart back if they killed it, because you're making a bunch of treasures. Interesting. And this does synergize with dragons. So I do think that you play that dragon berserker in here. And then the Goldspan dragon, of course. Interesting. This makes things interesting for dwarves. This makes me excited for dwarves, actually, where I was very unexcited for dwarves before. So we'll see. We shall see what we shall see. All right, open the Omen Paths. An instant for 3. Choose one. Add 2 mana of any one color and 2 mana of any other color. Spend this mana only to cast creature or enchantment spells, and creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Well, this is very interesting. Okay, so this is a bad card, but it is an interesting card, right? Because it's ramp and color fixing for red, which doesn't happen very often. Red very rarely sees ramp, and it is in the form of spells like this, where you're only getting like a few extra mana beyond the mana that you've already spent to cast the spell in the first place. So it's only ramping you 1. If you cast this on turn 3, you could play a turn 4 card. And what would that be? What is the most powerful 4 mana costing card for red? Goldspan Dragon's too expensive. In this set, Calamity Bearer? You could cast a Calamity Bearer on turn 3. I don't know exactly what is in standard right now. I don't play a lot of red, so I can't think of anything off the top of my head that this would care about. But that's what you would want to look for. So, I mean, and beyond that, creatures you control, they get +1/+0 is just kind of like poop, right? Whatever. You could, if you played this with the spell, with the, what's her face? The god? Whenever you cast a spell, add red. So this could technically boost you up to 5 on turn 3. No, because you would have to have that, you would have to have her out on turn 3. Which means that, yeah, it wouldn't work. the turn order and the converted mana cost wouldn't work for you to ramp do that correctly. So never mind, it's just a bad card. It's just a bad card. All right, Provoke the Trolls. Provoke the Trolls deals 3 damage to any target. If a creature is dealt damage this way, it gets +5/+0 until end of turn. Interesting. Pretty bad. Pretty bad because it only deals 3 damage for 4 mana. But I suppose if you wanted to give a creature +5/+0 until end of turn, this is a good way of doing it. So I suppose if you have like an Ember Cleave on something and you just want to end the game, then Provoke the Trolls. But that seems pretty poor. Quakebringer, a 5/4 giant berserker for 5. Your opponents can't gain life. Ooh. At the beginning of your upkeep, Quakebringer deals 2 damage to each opponent. This ability triggers only if Quakebringer is on the battlefield or if Quakebringer is in your graveyard and you control a giant. Damn. Giants just got swole, I guess. I don't know. For lack of a more refined term. This is great. So you run 4 of these. If your opponent kills them, then it doesn't matter. They're still taking 8 damage every turn. That's bonkers. I love it. They can't gain life. I love it. This is exactly what a red deck wants to see. And Foretell for 4, which is whatever. Very good. Very good. Definitely in every giant deck. Or of. Reckless Crew, a sorcery for 4. Create X/2/1 Red Dwarf Berserker tokens, where X is the number of vehicles you control, plus the number of equipment you control, and for each of those tokens, you may attach equipment to it. I mean, they're pushing so many weird ways to interact with dwarves. And it just doesn't seem to fit. Like, this is way too greedy. Equipment is greedy. You have to understand. And equipment is something that goes onto the battlefield that does nothing until you invest even more mana into it. And you have to have a creature to equip it to. Whereas an aura does get attached directly to a creature, so you don't have to pay an equipment cost. However, if that creature dies, you are 2-for-1ing yourself, which is the weakness of auras. You get to keep equipment, but it's just so expensive that it's not often viable. It's the only reason why Embercleave works is because its cost is reduced and gets attached immediately. And that's why it's so good. And it's the only reason that people like play that and not any other equipment. Like, do you see people playing any other equipment? No. No, you don't. Unless I'm missing something and there's another equipment that I'm not thinking of at the moment. But I really don't think that there is. Equipment is not good, typically. So, and vehicles, there are a couple vehicles that I've seen here. I haven't seen any really great vehicles. There are like some good vehicles in historic. But is there enough to make like an historic vehicle deck? And if there is, does this go into it? Probably not. Like, this card wants to be cool. It does. And the artwork is cool. I love this artwork. I really don't think that this is a good card. This is the type of card that I'm going to look at and I'm going to be like, this is cool. I want to build a deck around this card. And then I'm going to try and build a deck around this card for like 3 weeks. And it's not going to work. And I'm just going to have to like bin it because it's just not good. But we'll see. Sometimes that stuff surprises me. So I'm still going to try. I do always try. And I will try with this card. And I will try with dwarves. But so far, I'm very suspicious. I'm very sus on this card. Alright. Run Amok. Instant for 2. Target attacking creature gets +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. Oh yeah, Run Amok. We know Run Amok. We love Run Amok. Good in is it spells. Alright, Rune of Speed. Okay, so here's the red rune. For 2, enchant permanent, draw a card. As long as enchanted, it gets +1/+0 in haste. That makes perfect sense. Very, very eh. You definitely want to attach it to an equipment or vehicle. No, you don't even want to equip it to a vehicle. You want to put this on an equipment because it's pretty useless if you attach it to just a creature, unless you're attaching it to the creature that turn. And in which case you're playing like a creature that's not that great because it costs 2 less than the mana that you actually have to play. So you're not wanting to play that creature anyway. So yeah, I think this is not one of the better runes. Okay, Seize the Spoils. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards, and create a treasure token. Okay, so more treasure synergy. So this belongs in a treasure deck probably, if you have space in your treasure deck. All right, Shackles of Treachery. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature until the end of turn. It gains haste, and whenever this creature deals damage, destroy target equipment attached to it. That's very specific. That is super duper specific. Probably never getting played. Not even in a sideboard. It's too specific for a sideboard. All right, Smashing Success. Nice name. I like it. Instant for 4. Destroy target artifact or land. If artifact destroy this way, create a treasure token. Land destruction. That would be the only reason why. You wouldn't play this for destroying an artifact. You might at some point do it, but you play this in your land destruction deck. You make a land destruction deck and you put this in it. Anyway. Oh my god, look at this art. Squash. An instant for 5. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a giant. Okay. Squash deals 6 damage to target creature or planeswalker. I love this card. I love everything about this card. The troll had recently crushed a human in much the same way. Sadly, he expired too quickly to appreciate the irony. That's hilarious. I love it. Good in a giant deck. I mean, there's so many things that are good in a giant deck at this point that I'm not sure if this would make it, but it might. 6 damage for 2 is good. But obviously that's conditional, right? All right, Surtland Flinger. A 4/6 giant berserker for 5. Whenever Surtland Flinger attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Surtland Flinger deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. If the sacrificed creature was a giant, it deals twice that much damage instead. Oh, god. There is some awesome giant jank that is coming out of these cards, man. This is like a fling. I mean, it's a flinger, right? So this is a fling attached to a creature card. It is a repeatable fling attached to a creature card, which is just everything that a jank player wants. That is amazing. We got to make this happen. We got to make giant flings, because there's a bunch of cards in giants that double the amount of damage that you do. So you don't even need a big creature. You just need like a creature with 5 power, which is like that dwarf that we saw earlier, or whatever. That 5/1. We saw a 5/1 up there earlier. I can't remember. Maybe it was a vehicle. You just freaking fling that and goodbye. It's doubled twice, so 20 damage, and oh, that sounds like fun. It seems like there might be more than just one kind of giant deck that we're going to be building. I like it. Okay. Tibolt's Trickery. An instant for 2. Counter target spell. Choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card with a different name than that spell. They may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then they put the exiled cards on the bottom of their library in a random order. What? All right, so it's a red. The first what? There's many whats here, okay? The first what is, this is a red counterspell. I don't think I've seen a red counterspell since like the very beginning. Elemental Blast? Red Elemental Blast? So cool, right? Choose 1, 2, or 3 at random. Its controller mills that many cards. So this is kind of like preventing you from setting up some weird ass jank, right? This is like if you put something on top of your library, you got to be lucky. You got to be lucky to hit it. Its controller mills that many cards, then exiles from the top of their library until they exile an on-land card with different name than that spell. Then they may cast that card without paying its mana cost. So this is like very dangerous, unless you're doing it to yourself, in which case that requires a lot of setup. So say you cast something really cheap like an Opt, and you counter that spell. Now you're looking through your deck for something other than an Opt, and then you can cast it, and they may cast that card. It just has to have a different name. So it can be anything. It can be a permanent, it could be an instant or sorcery. And then you cast that. But you can't set it up because of the way that choosing 1, 2, or 3 at random mills the top of your deck. So if you put it, you know, in 4th place and you're like, well, I'll just put it at number 4 and just hope that there's nothing in the top 3 of my deck that is worth that will be cast. Or I choose randomly 3 so that it mills 3 and just gives me a number 4. But how do you even set up number 4? There's like very few cards that will allow you to scry to 4. So it would be really hard to set up this card. Maybe Forever Young could do it. But even then you still have to guess. You'd have to put 4 good things on top. I mean, you don't care about the first card because you're never getting the first card. So, but you could get the 2nd card or the 3rd card or the 4th card. And if you didn't set up at all, you could get something even further down the line than that. That's, this is some jank. This is some weird jank. And I am not sure whether I like it or not. This is the kind of thing that I'm going to want to play with, and it's probably always going to be weird. It's like that Rakdos treasure box card, Pandora's box or whatever. Allure of the Unknown. It's like that. Very chancy, very weird, but it is a red counterspell, which is not for nothing. So if you're playing a red deck, would you play this as a counterspell? No, you would not. You would not play this card. Because whatever it is that you're countering, if it's not like literally the worst thing that your opponent could do, then you would never want to cast this. Oh, it's very interesting. This is kind of the stuff that I like about Magic. This weird stuff. This is very weird. It makes Magic interesting. All right. Anyway, we're almost done. This one's been a long one. I apologize about that. All right. Torel, God of Fury, a 5/4 god for 4. Trample. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Torel deals damage equal to that excess to any target other than that permanent. Huh. Very interesting. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls deals excess... Oh, an opponent controls. Sorry. I missed that part. That's actually a really important part. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage. Oh, is dealt, not deal. Okay. So it's how I originally thought. So damage that you deal that is in excess gets dealt to anything else. And that includes that excess damage, right? So if your opponent has 5 1/1s and you hit 1 with something that deals 5 damage to it, then you take that 4 damage and deal it to the next thing. It deals 4 damage to that thing. Then you take 3 damage out of that 4 because there's 3 excess on that one and you deal it to the other one, and so on and so forth until you kill all 5 of them. That's cool. This is cool. This definitely belongs in a burn deck. But it would be pretty useless if your opponent was not creature based. This card is, I mean, it's not worthless, right? Because it's a 5/4 for 4 with trample. So it's just a good creature. It's got good stats on top of this interesting interaction that it has. So it's not like it would be useless against a control deck, but yeah, this is cool. I like this. More interesting cards from red. Good job, Red, this time, I think. Alright, so Torel's Hammer. Legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature has, for 2, unequip this. Unequip this. Deal 3 damage to any target, and then return it to its owner's hand. Oh, interesting. Okay, it's another god that actually has an artifact that returns to your hand. Like the blue one. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 as long as it's legendary. Ah. Interesting. Bad. So this artifact does literally, or I'm sorry, this equipment does literally nothing if the creature is not legendary. Unless it's attached. So, I don't know how I feel about that. And you have to invest 4 to equip it to something? I do not know how I feel about that. The hammer seems bad. It's interesting because you can return it to your hand, so you can cast it and equip it, and then hit something for 3, and then cast Torel. Because it's returned to your hand, so you can cast it now. Which is nice. But it's kind of poopy. Yeah. Alright. I like Torel. Don't like his hammer. Alright. Tormentor's Helm. An equipment for 1. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to defending player. And equip for 1. This is not a bad equipment. Very simple. If you wanted to make a dwarf berserker equipment deck, then you put 4 of these in there. Yeah. And you could probably rune it up too. With what rune would you put on here? Maybe the life gain rune? Well, so if you're playing dwarves, right? Then you're probably Boros, because those are the dwarf colors. And then you could gain lifelink and +1/+0 in haste, put it on this thing. We'll have to see how that turns out. But this is a very cheap equipment that is useful. It is useful. So I would say that's a good one. All right, Tundra Fumarole. Tundra Fumarole? All right, a snow sorcery. Is this the second snow? There's only 2 snow things in red, and this is 1. Let me just make sure. Frostbite. And that's it. Gosh, what a waste. Well, let's see. It deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Add colorless for each snow spent to cast this spell. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Oh, interesting. Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. So this is like... This is more of that, okay, let's give red extra mana. But it's like slightly out of reach because you have to use snow for it, and red doesn't want snow right now, from what I can tell. So it's like, here's this cool thing. Don't you wish you had it? Oh, but you also have to like put, you know, maggots in your bread. You want this bread, this delicious piece of bread, you got to put some maggots on it in order to like eat it. That's kind of how this feels. So I don't see this being played unless like there's something else that we're going to come across that makes it playable, unfortunately. The Scary Firewalker, a 3/2 human berserker for 3. Boast for 1. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. That's not a bad boast. That's actually a pretty good boast for red, to be honest with you. But the card is just so meh other than that. It's just like a 3/2 for 3. Human berserker, so okay, but... like, the boast is good. I'm not gonna lie, that boast is good. And I think the boast reducer doesn't say that it can't be reduced to less than 1, right? Boast abilities you have that you activate cost 1 less to activate for each dragon you control. Yeah, so this boast, you could boast for 0 very easily. Which is nice, but it's a 3/2 with no way of protecting itself. So what? You get in, you cast this thing, you get in the next turn, you boast it for 1, you have 1 extra card to play. I mean, that's nice. It's just not nice enough. I think there are too many other things that are just better than this. You wouldn't want to play this over lots of stuff, to be honest with you. Alright, Vault Robber. Last one. A 1/3 Dwarf Rogue for 2. A Dwarf Rogue. I have played World of Warcraft for many years and I still don't understand how that works. Alright. For 1 and tap, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a treasure token. Gosh, interesting. Bad, probably. I mean, it might have a place in a dwarf treasure token deck. It might. But, you have to exile creature cards from your graveyard, so it's kind of a late game card. 1/3. Not badly costed for its, you know, for its stats and stuff, so it's playable. If you find the right spot for it, it's playable. Alright, so that's the end of the red review. And I am starving, because I've been doing this for a number of hours and my stomach is starting to growl. So I'm going to go get some food and then I'm going to go do the green one. So, stay tuned for that later. And thank you all for sticking with me throughout this journey. These are all super cool cards. I'm very interested in Kaldheim right now. And we're going to do green, and then after that we'll probably tackle colorless, multicolor, and lands all in one. So there'll be 2 more videos, I think. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying this so far, and I'll see you next time.